A mother's love is like no other, and this mother went undercover to prove that. She ended up searching for her missing daughter, which led to the rescue of over 100 trafficked girls in Argentina. This case exposed so much widespread corruption and human trafficking. Nothing was being done until this mother decided enough was enough. Before this entire thing occurred, many young girls were forced into sex work in Argentina, and the amount was unknown. Girls from ages 13 to 17 would disappear. They were often enslaved and held in brothels before being sold to Spain once they turned of age. They were traumatized into submission, and no one was coming to save them. Human trafficking wasn't even yet a crime in Argentina until now. Everything would change due to this mother and daughter relationship and her fight to find her daughter. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I am Brooke Makenna. Here on this channel, we focus on the victims and the survivors over the killers and the perpetrators. If that's something that also interests you when it comes to true crime and making that more of a priority, then please subscribe down below and give this video a thumbs up if you would like some more. But first, a quick thank you to our sponsor, Clover. Now, Clover is a financial app designed to give you faster access to your money without the predatory practices. It's earned wage access that can give you an advance of up to $400 before payday with no interest, no credit checks, no hidden fees, and no late fees. The max used to be $250, but it has recently gone up to $400. There are also no monthly membership fees to get in advance, and it's basically just to bridge the gap between payday if you're in a bit of financial stress, especially around the holidays where the giving is abundant but the funds are low. Clover can help with your peace of mind, just being able to access that $400 instantly for the holidays, for gifts, or for just general expenses. I know so many of us can struggle with asking for help, but with Clover, they are just getting you your money that you've earned early. So I genuinely hope that this can help some of you during this holiday season, and you can use my link below to let them know that I sent you in order to sign up. Just check that link below. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 2002 in Argentina, and Marita de Los Angeles Veron lived with her mother, Susana Trimarco, and her father, Daniel, in Tucumán, Argentina. Marita was actually the mother of a 2-year-old girl named Michaela and was studying to be a school teacher. She was a dreamer. She had big plans for her life, and on April 3rd, she would actually head out to a doctor's appointment. She was headed to get an IUD at a maternity clinic. She didn't want to have any more children, at least not for that time. But she would never return home to her mother or to her daughter. She didn't take her ID with her. That was left at home, and she had only taken about 5 pesos with her, and her mother knew that because she had spoken to her mother about how she only had big bills, and she asked if she could take some of her mother's instead and only take 5 with her. She told her mother this appointment would only take about an hour. It was only a few blocks away from where they lived. So when her mother returned home later that day, her father was there and she still wasn't. And her father began to say he had a bad feeling that something had happened to her. He said he had been thinking about her all day, and then he decided to go and look for her. So he immediately went out, and then he came back home saying he couldn't find her, so they went out searching together. They only lived 6 blocks away. So they immediately went to the police, and the police claimed that they were not going to write down a report for their daughter's disappearance because she was an adult and she was probably with boyfriends or friends, and she could basically just be anywhere. When pressed on the issue, the police actually informed them that they did not have enough paperwork to write down the report, nor did they have enough gas in the patrol car to go and look for her. Her parents were baffled by this, and they were not going to stop searching. So her father actually had a friend from high school who had become the police commissioner named Jorge Tovar, and he would be the only one to support this family and help them search. Daniel went to his house, told him the story of his missing daughter, and Tovar began investigating on his own outside of the police department. Meanwhile, another investigation began by regular citizens. a devoted mother and father determined to find their daughter. Susana was a married mother of 2 and a government worker, but now she would become the person responsible for the rescue of over 100 girls. Between these 2 investigations, they would find a witness from the area of the maternity clinic that day who claimed that they had witnessed a kidnapping. A woman was forced into a red car with a logo on it. A group of men had snatched her while she was walking down the street. The witness had gone to a nearby grocery store and told the owner what she had seen. Susana and her husband Daniel were going to the neighbors of the area. They were talking to Marita's friends, and no one knew where Marita was. Now, this vehicle was found to have the logo on it, and when they looked at this logo, they found that it was a taxi company called Cinco Estrellas, owned by a local family called the Ailes. But again, it was a taxi, so they didn't know that that would even point to the proper owner. But Marita's parents walked through the hospital asking all of the staff if they had seen her. Her father kept having this awful feeling while inside the hospital that somebody had done something to her. After being given no answers there, they were walking the streets to search for her, and they walked everywhere they could around Argentina while continuing to press the police to get involved. They suspected that Marita's neighbor, Patricia Soria, could have been involved, as she was a nurse who lived in the same neighborhood, and she had talked to Marita, who confided in her that she was going to get an IUD, and Patricia insisted that she went to this specific maternity clinic. She said that her boyfriend was the head of personnel. However, when Marita went to the maternity center for the first time, which was actually a day prior to when she vanished, she was told that the head of personnel was a woman. And then Patricia's boyfriend showed up, brought her to a doctor that she had never met before. Then he introduced her as his goddaughter. Then she began talking to this male doctor. Marita would tell her mom that he said that she would need a pap smear and an ultrasound before she could get an IUD. So she was going to need a new appointment. So this male doctor sent her to a woman in the lab, and this woman told her she could give her an appointment for the next day. Now, she was not a receptionist. This was a woman in the laboratory area, and she told her she just needed to bring her ID so that they could stamp it. Now, Marita immediately thought this was weird because it was already stamped when she got it. She didn't know why they would need her ID. But the woman said that that was just protocol. Now, as Marita was leaving, she would tell her mother she actually saw a mugshot on a bulletin board of Patricia Soria, her neighbor, said that she was wanted for the theft of a child after stealing one from there. Marita told her mother all of this when she returned home. She also said she was not bringing her ID back to that place when she went back because it was just weird and unnecessary. Susana said that Patricia, the neighbor, had previously asked Marita a lot of details about her private life and her family, and Susana just did not trust her. So while Tucumán police refused to do anything, the police in La Ramada, which was around 50 miles away, were believed to actually come in contact with the missing girl, having no idea who she was. This was 3 days after she had vanished on April 6th, and the La Ramada police had spoken to a woman that witnesses later believed to be Marita. She was wearing heels instead of the sneakers that Marita had been wearing when she vanished, and it was believed that she had escaped a sex party. Witnesses claimed she was wandering around, she was looking disoriented, she was saying that she wanted to go back to Tucumán, and it was claimed that when the police found her, they spoke to her and they took her to a local bus station. Though the police never confirmed this and Marita never made it home. 3 weeks later, a sex worker in the area informed Susana that Marita had been sold to traffickers and taken to La Rioja. Now, Susana began to learn at this time about mafias kidnapping and selling women in Argentina, and she believed that her daughter was under the control of these mafias, but she refused to give up on her. With no police protection, Susana decided she would go undercover. You see, she suspected that there were a few brothels where girls were being held. This was in the La Rioja area. This was about 6 hours from where Marita was believed to last be seen in La Ramada and 5 hours from her hometown. Witnesses had come forward saying they had seen Marita there in these brothels. So her mother went undercover. Susana knew this was a dangerous mission, but she would say she no longer had fear with her daughter missing. Over the next few years, her undercover mother would disguise herself as a sex worker and infiltrate these brothels. She honed in on 3 in particular, called Candy, the Limelight, and the Challenge, that she identified as fronts. While inside, several of these sex workers confided in Susana that they were sexually exploited, held against their will, and often forced to drink so much alcohol until they couldn't anymore, and then they were given oils so that they would throw it up and they could continue drinking, so they were constantly drugged. They would tell Susana that many other people believed that they were working as a nanny or a cleaner, but they were never allowed to leave these brothels again. While being undercover, Susana was sacrificing quite a lot. She was still taking care of her granddaughter. At one point, the electricity in her home was cut off because she couldn't pay her bills, and then she was living on the streets. But she was determined to find her daughter, and so Susana had to pretend that Marita was not her daughter. She was forced to engage in this illegal activity to get everyone to trust her. And while getting these other girls to trust her, some claimed they'd actually seen Marita. However, she was constantly being moved from place to place to place. It was alleged that Marita had given birth to another baby fathered by one of her captors. It was also believed that she tried to escape through a small window but was caught. With this information and the information about the brothels, Susana went back to the police, and finally they were able to use this evidence to conduct a raid of these suspected brothels. They would find that these were the places of the practice of prostitution where there is a systematic recruitment of women, including by means of depriving them of their liberty. Susana was never able to actually go to these raids, but she would go to the courthouse directly after to get information on the survivors, hoping to find her daughter named as one of them. And even though she never was, many of the survivors would go and live with Susana after this until their families could be found and they could get back on their feet so that they didn't fall victim once again. So dozens of women were freed during these raids. One that was being held at the Candy brothel reported that she had seen Marita with dyed hair and blue contact lenses, but that she had been removed prior to the raids. It was actually a week prior, and if they would have come a week prior, they would have found her. But during that time, a Judge Marino warned the brothel staff, and the head of intelligence came to pick up 5 girls, including Marita and 4 minors. Remember Judge Marino, because that will come back into play in this case. At this point, Susana knew that she was too late when it came to working as a sex worker at these brothels, so she began to place herself higher up in these networks. Commissioner Tover stated that he didn't know what they should fear more, the government or the mafias. So Susana decided to disguise herself as a buyer of the women being trafficked. She didn't even tell her husband she was doing this. And she stated that she learned that each girl had a price, and there were underage girls there, all terrified. She said they wouldn't look at you. They tried to cover their barely dressed bodies with their own hands. But again, she was able to get enough information that the police were finally listening. More raids occurred and more women were rescued, but never Marita. Susana was experiencing death threats. She escaped being run over twice. She had kidnapping threats against her granddaughter. Her house was set on fire, and many were trying to silence her. But she said, "The desperation of a mother blinds you. It makes you fearless." And that is when a woman named Lydia Medina would give another clue to Marita's whereabouts, but not willingly. You see, Medina was found to own all 3 of the brothels that were raided by the police. She was always there at the brothels, watching over the girls. She would pull revolvers on them if they tried to leave. And she had a son named Chinga, who was always there and called the girls his wives. This mother was known as Mama Lili, and she was actually under arrest after the raids of unlawful deprivation of liberty and aggravated promotion of prostitution, along with her son, Chinga Gomez. She was believed to be overheard in jail saying, "Those fools are looking for her, and she's in Spain." This was believed to be about Marita. So then another ring that was connected to Spain was found when a woman named Daniela Milhine was accused of intending to transport Marita to Rio Gallegos 35 hours away from the brothels. She ended up being arrested along with her husband and a La Rioja province official who were all said to be transporting women. 17 women were rescued after this arrest, but again, never Marita. Susana was finding more and more information. She was uncovering rings and networks, and she was exposing these to the police. She was said to rescue 120 women herself. However, the daughter remained a missing person. The problem was, and she would later find this out, the people that she was confiding in, the people who were supposed to be helping reduce crime, were actually possibly the ones involved in it. But in 2007, 5 years after Marita's disappearance, Susana Trimarco campaigned for human trafficking to be made a crime in Argentina. Like I said, it was yet to be at this time. It was alleged that Marita was one of the many victims that were abducted by sex rings to cater to powerful clients in Argentina. Due to this, that year, Argentina passed legislation that made human trafficking a crime for the very first time. And this was believed to aid in the rescue of 3,000 girls. Susana founded the Marita of Angels Foundation to rescue even more kidnapped girls and also give them a place to call home and to heal. She was actually honored by the U.S. State Department with the International Women of Courage Award, and she was also honored by the Argentine government and nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts. But she just wanted her daughter back, and she wanted to be the mom making happy memories with her family instead of having to do all this fighting. She had also taken on the role of raising Marita's daughter, Michaela. Her daughter, Michaela, spoke about not remembering much about Marita, but that she knew her grandmother was very strong, almost too strong. She was always wanting to help others. Michaela would say that her grandfather, Daniel, kept her life as normal as possible for her, and she really appreciated that. During this time, Susana wrote and published a book called Stolen Lives to expose this corruption to Argentinians. Around this time, the Spanish embassy even tried to work with her when they heard that Marita might have been brought to Spain as a sex worker there. That she unfortunately was not located. But Argentina's president, Cristina Fernandez, had enacted Rubro 59, banning the ads of sexual services in newspapers and magazines, further helping to condemn these rings that were occurring. After 10 years that Susana Trimarco was fighting for her daughter, 13 people would go on trial for the kidnapping and sale of Marita Veron. This was on February 8th of 2012, and this was the first trial to be held against a sex trafficking ring in Argentina. This was 7 men and 6 women who would go on trial for the next 3 months. All the defendants stated that they were innocent and argued that this case was politically motivated. Now, the full list of defendants included Irma Lydia Medina, who is the owner of the brothels, as well as her 2 twin sons, Gonzalez Gomez and Gonzalez's brother, Jose Fernando, or Chinga Gomez. Chinga was what he went by. He was 30 years old. He was believed to be feared by many, but he feared none himself. His brother Gonzalez was said to be a mama's boy and just relied on his mother heavily. But both would work under her and do exactly what she said. There was also another man, Juan de Rebortes, who was believed to be Chinga Gomez's right-hand man, and he also told Commissioner Tover that he couldn't speak out about Chinga because Chinga was so powerful, and this man had 3 daughters of his own. There was also a man named Victor Ramiro and his sister, who was Maria Jesus Rivero, who was actually the owner of the car service, the taxi company that was allegedly used to kidnap Marita, and they were members of the mafia because she was a man named Ruben Ailes' ex-wife. Ruben Ailes was believed to be the leader of a mafia in the area, but he was not one of the defendants. Now, Daniela Milheim, we talked about her a bit. She was the one who was believed to transport some of these women, and she also had a ring out of her home, she would send the women to work in the brothels in different cities and then transport them there as well. And this was with her husband, Andres Gonzalez. Another man on trial was Domingo Andrada, a La Rioja police officer who was believed to be the last to see Marita when she had allegedly been put on that bus. Now, the remaining 4 defendants we don't know a lot about, but their names are Maria Marquez, Mariana Bustos, Carlos Luna, and Cynthia Gatan. The trial heard 130 witnesses, including survivors of the brothels rescued by Susana Trimarco. Susana then testified herself. She said that while she uncovered these rings made of politicians and police, she learned that human trafficking was a business in Argentina. And she stated that the only thing that she was looking for was the return of her daughter. She told the court that 2 years prior, her husband, Daniel, had passed away. He had 2 strokes and then a heart attack, but he was struggling mentally ever since Marita had vanished. Susana stated that she had gone to the governor's mansion to actually look for help in finding her daughter at the beginning, but she said that that was stupid because she would find that the governor and the mafias were working together, and they told her to go talk to Ruben Ale, the leader of the mafia, because he handles all the drugs and the prostitution. She believed that Ruben Ale should also be charged in her daughter's disappearance. But she ended her testimony with, "Unfortunately, I became a specialist in this crime because I touched it, I lived it, and I searched for my daughter. I'll never give up the search. Whoever falls, falls. My mission is my daughter. I do not want to close my eyes before finding out about her. There are many missing girls who we are helping, but I care about my daughter." So then experts began to testify, and an officer, Julio Fernandez, who now runs the Tucumán Police Department, is devoted to investigating human trafficking, and he testified that Marita may have been kidnapped twice, with the complicity of the very authorities who should have protected her when she was first found and allegedly taken to the bus station. He said that there were witnesses who heard that the police officer, Domingo Andrada, actually took her to a brothel, not the bus stop. Now, other Tucumán police testified that back in 2002, when she vanished, they sought search warrants in La Rioja brothels, but a judge named Daniel Marino made them wait hours before signing it. They believed this was in order for them to let the brothels know and to get Marita out. This was corroborated by the survivors who stated that they heard a Judge Marino warning these people. Now, Judge Marino denied delaying the raid or having anything to do with the defendants. But many of these survivors would actually testify about their experiences at the brothels and their rescue. They said that their appearance would be changed and then false documents would be created for them. They would be beaten. They were never allowed outside unless it was night, and that's where they would be beaten if they refused to work. They spoke about girls who were killed. One allegedly had her neck twisted by Medina before being thrown down the stairs. And while these girls were testifying, looking the abusers, the captors, in the face, the defendants were able to yell at them, calling them names. But these girls kept telling their stories. One survivor spoke about how she knew that people were looking for Marita, and she had seen a woman in the brothel that she believed to be her, so she asked, and Marita confirmed that it was her. She said at that point, Chinga Gomez then showed up and took Marita away. Another said that Chinga introduced Marita to her as his wife, and Marita had a C-section scar on her stomach. They said that she looked lost standing there in her underwear. Another survivor stated that she was tied up in the kitchen, and Marita, who was carrying a baby on her hip, came and loosened her restraints. Marita then told this girl that the baby was a product of rape by Chinga. Another said that they spoke to Marita, who told them that she felt trapped and she really missed her daughter. But then Chinga would testify that he didn't know Marita, so he couldn't have had a baby with her. He said he had nothing to hide. He then spoke to Susana, and he said that he wished he knew something so that he could tell her. Now, Irma Medina told the court that they had nothing to do with this case and they didn't properly investigate what happened to Marita. Defendant Daniela Milheim then testified that she had actually been trafficked by Ruben Ale when she was 16 years old. So she was a victim here. She didn't have any part in what they did to Marita, and she had been forced to work for 6 years without being paid because Ruben Ale kept all of her money. However, while Daniela was saying that she was a victim, a survivor told the court that she witnessed Marita being held captive by Daniela and Daniela trying to manipulate her and convince her that she was there on her own free will. Basically, Daniela would tell these survivors that she would make them a lot of money and she would send them to places where they could get work, but of course they would then have to send money back to her. 10 survivors testified that they had seen Marita during this time with these people and that they knew that her state of health was bad. They were all believed to be liars. These defendants could have gotten 25 years in prison, but with 55 experts, 140 witnesses, and 660 boxes of statements, on December 11th of 2012, the 13 accused in the kidnapping were acquitted. The courtroom erupted, and all of the defendants began crying, hugging one another. The judges didn't have much to say other than there wasn't enough evidence to convict all the defendants, but they did state that the defendant police officer Andrada had evidence against him that was quite convincing that he could be a kidnapper of young people, but there was no proof that he participated in this particular case. Now, Susana was devastated and everyone knew that that was going to occur, but no one could have predicted the outcry from the community as well. When Susana appealed this, it led to an outrage in Argentina. Citizens took to the streets in thousands to protest. However, the judge stood strong in saying, there was 3 of them, and saying that there was not enough evidence to convict them. Susana told reporters it is absolutely clear that they put up money and that this is an act of corruption. Michaela, her daughter, watched on TV as her mom was denied justice, and Susana told her team, "We still have to find her, and I still have that power and strength that my daughter gives me." She was not giving up. And one of the judges who had presided over the trial actually resigned after all of this controversy. But Susana and her foundation team that she had built began to search properties connected to Ruben Ale's family for Marita's remains. This included a nautical club with cabins and a drinking well. A tip had come in basically saying that Marita was killed there and thrown into the drainage well. They were unable to find anything, but the search continued. Susana was angry, and she was full of the fire to find her daughter. So a week after the acquittal, Susana met with Argentina's president, claiming that the 3 judges were corrupt. She stated that Ruben Ale paid them bribes. So impeachment proceedings were started against them, and their personal information was actually exposed on the internet by protesters. I mean, this wasn't even just in Argentina. This was reaching all over the world, and First Lady Michelle Obama also publicly reached out about the acquittal, saying that she wanted to support Susana. But due to Susana's work, raids were still occurring in Argentina, and by 2013, 57 raids took place in 2 weeks, and 100 more women were rescued. She stated that a lot of the mafias and the rings there were under police protection. Medina, who was believed to be the owner of the brothels and was also acquitted in Marita's disappearance, would later be detained for drugs after being caught in a bus terminal with a package of drugs after visiting her son, Chinga. Federal prosecutors would later state that the first trial had plenty of evidence to charge the 13 with crimes that would get sentences of at least 15 years. While nobody had been convicted for Marita's kidnapping, many began to point out the similarities between this case and the injustice and the 2004 murder of Sandra Cabrera. Now, she was actually a sex worker who had spoken out against the sexual exploitation of women in Rosario, Argentina. And she was citing proof of involvement of the police, political officials, and judges. She began speaking out in 2000 to the media, stating that the police would chase street workers instead of combating the child sex work or the pimping that was happening. She alleged that the police were actually committing pimping because they would extract money through blackmail from the sex workers. She also spoke about assaults by brothel businesses and threats from police. She made 10 formal complaints about the police and then against the chief and deputy chief for harassment of sex workers. They were actually removed due to this, and only 5 months later, Sandra was murdered. Before her murder, someone had actually broken into her home and beat her. She had 15 death threats made against her. But on January 27th of 2004, she was standing at her usual corner when a man came up to her and they left to go back to her home, allegedly. But she was found shot in the back of the neck. Now, during the murder investigation, it was found that the officer of federal police named Diego was romantically involved with Sandra, and he was actually arrested for her murder but released due to lack of evidence. Many in the public believed that the police had murdered her, as Argentinian police had a history of murdering sex workers even if they weren't speaking out, and Sandra was not only a sex worker, but she was speaking out against them. So Sandra's murder at this point remains unsolved. So the corruption was something that was well known and becoming more and more widespread in Argentina. But by December of 2013, the Supreme Court actually overturned the acquittal of the defendants. 11 of the 13 were then convicted of the kidnapping and exploitation of Marita Veron. Only 2 acquittals were actually upheld, and this was Victor Romero and his sister Maria Jesus Rivero, who were the owners of the taxi service used to kidnap Marita and also members of the mafia. Remember Ruben Ailes' ex-wife and brother-in-law. It was said that there was not enough evidence to convict them. Their acquittal was upheld, and then one of the 11 who were being convicted passed away. This was Lydia Medina, the owner of the brothels. Lydia was believed to be the woman who actually bought Marita to prostitute her, and the court concluded that Chinga and Gonzalo, her sons, had kidnapped her, and then Daniela Milheim and Andreas Gonzalez kept her captive for sexual exploitation. The other 6 were deemed necessary participants in this case, who were Carlos Luna, Domingo Andrada, Maria Marquez, Juan de Robertis, Mariana Bustos, and Cynthia Gatan. Now, the sentencings were very hard to find. I could find that the Gomez brothers were sentenced to 22 years, and 7 others were given between 10 to 17 years. But due to this investigation into Marita's kidnapping and the possible connection between her and the Ale family, that alleged mafia, investigators actually uncovered a money laundering scheme of 40 million pesos that resulted in the 2017 arrest of Ruben Ale, his brother Angel Ale, his former wife Maria Jesus Rivero, who had been acquitted in the Marita case, and multiple others in their mafia for money laundering linked to and drug trafficking crimes. The Ale family was believed to have a long history of legal troubles, and they were high profile due to their alleged power in the community. They were known as the Tucumán Criminal Clan. Maria Jesus Rivero wrote an angry letter while in jail to Susana, blaming her for everything. But Ruben and Angel Ale brothers were convicted together as the head of this illicit association, considered guilty of the crime of asset laundering. However, Ruben and Angel were sentenced to 10 years, and Maria Jesus Rivero was given 6. But even with this conviction against the Ale brothers, Marita's daughter Michaela did not believe that that was enough. Basically, Marita's daughter and her mother believed that the Ailes had much more to do with it, and Michaela said that they are condemned for other causes and not for the crimes committed against my mother is a real disappointment of justice. Ruben Ale would then actually die in prison, and it was said he did so without paying for the damage that he did to the Tucumán society, and he died without saying where Marita was. 21 years after her disappearance in 2023, a press conference was held about Marita Veron. Her mother stated that she was reached out to by a man who told her that during a meeting for the labor union, members started talking about the existence of a folder that confirmed that Marita was dead. This information was being used by union members to basically blackmail each other. Several witnesses would testify that there was a folder containing pictures of her body taken in 2004. It was believed that she was last seen alive 2 years after she had vanished, but she had died in 2004. Several people would soon be accused of hiding what they knew about Marita for the past 10 years. But these photos of her body, allegedly deceased, were taken in the morgue of the Les Medicana clinic. And the union leader at the time of her death was believed to be friends with Ruben Ale, the mafia leader and the man that Susana blamed for her daughter's kidnapping. The tips began coming in to Susana a week after Ruben Ale's death. Lawyers claim that there was enough evidence to affirm that the folder existed, but not exactly what was inside. To date, Susana's foundation has rescued more than 900 women and girls and provides housing and medical and psychological aid for survivors. But even though she has done so much for other girls, she still wants to find her daughter. She says, "I will keep looking for her until I find her." While Susana, with the fire of her daughter within her, has done amazing work in Argentina, and they are now actually classified as a Tier 1 country by the United States, meaning that their government fully complies with the Trafficking Victims Protections Act and the minimum standards, they still struggle with victim support and the prosecution when it comes to human trafficking. There are still many young girls who have yet to be rescued in Argentina, but that is also just all over the world. I truly hope that one day she is told what happened to her daughter. I think the fact that that information about the morgue and the folder and the photos came out just 2 years ago, I think that more and more is going to be exposed, especially now that Ruben Ale has passed away. This is a woman who deserves to get everything she wants in life, but all she wants is her daughter. I will have her book linked down below. It is in Portuguese, and I was unable to find it translated. A lot of these articles that I researched, I did have to translate, so I do apologize if my pronunciations aren't that great. If I misinterpreted some of the things, I did try to do my best to get accurate information for you guys, but if you do speak Portuguese, if you are in Argentina, please leave me anything down below that you think that we need to know or any corrections that you would like to make as far as my retelling of this story. I appreciate you guys so much for listening. It has been such a wonderful year with you, and I cannot wait for next year and all of your support. You guys, my gems, I appreciate you endlessly, and I have so much planned for you in the new year that I'm so excited. So keep coming back every Sunday, and I cannot wait to show you what's in store. So don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.